We're proud of you. You're an excellent regent.
Pourquoi tout le monde t'appelle mon père et moi je peux même pas t'appeler papa?
Sul on kogu aeg olnud julgus joosta ära. Sul on olnud julgus teha teisiti.
Hello and welcome to our film show. Critic Lisa Nesselson joins us for the week's releases, and we're starting with a royal marriage that's gone down in history. Henry VIII's sixth wife, Catherine Parr, is at the centre of this film, Firebrand. Let's take a look.
Flirting with the radicals, it could endanger the stability of this realm.
My conscience is clear. I believe that I was chosen by God to change the king's mind.
Regal.
Is my father often angry with you?
Are you alive?
I never know what he's going to do. I never know what he's thinking.
I'll never break you.
Sometimes we think you know us better than we know ourselves.
So Firebrand takes us to 16th century England. The king is in poor health. It looks like he's in a pretty bad mood as well. His wife's trying to keep her head quite literally on her shoulders while also flirting with the underground agitators. Does this all make for a good setup for the story?
I enjoyed this, above all, because Jude Law is just so much fun to watch. He corrals his intelligence as an actor to make this monstrous monarch human and absolutely convincing. About that standout performance, they apparently went so far as to cover his real-life blue eyes, and he studied with a historic specialist in Henry VIII's afflictions. The changing of his leg bandages is not for the faint of heart. I think they had putrid smells wafting around the set. And Law had a chart of how high his fever was likely to have been each day. I have to wonder about the attraction so many people have to despots and dictators in our time when the lessons of absolute monarchy are so obviously unnerving. In the Tudor era, when this is set, Henry VIII had his whims and the royal we. And England was far from an empire. Countries like France or Portugal were way more influential. Henry was not about to go to marriage counseling when there were beheading facilities or, stakes with supplies of firewood at hand. Being his spouse was a perilous, mostly lethal undertaking, except for wife number 6, Catherine Parr, played here by Alicia Vikander.
Yes, she was indeed the final one. Well, here's more from Jude Law on his careful preparation for the role.
Once I put sort of everything on, we didn't want to use prosthetics, but there was a sort of process to getting to him, and we changed my hairline, and I obviously had this beard, and there were certain things I put in my mouth, and certain things I did. The costume and the layers, multiple layers of the costumes, and taking on this walk. Once I was sort of in Henry mode, there was no sort of turning back. But that's also the way Karim worked. We didn't really take breaks. It wasn't like lunchtime and everyone, we're not. We would just film, and we shot it all at Haddon Hall on one location, so we were able to be quite nimble as a film unit.
Sounds quite intense. Well, this story is deeply English, and yet the director is Brazilian, Karim Aïnouz. Tell us more about him.
Well, he first made a splash in 2002 with Madame Sata, based on the eventful life of a flamboyant, gender-fluid man starting in the 1930s, and nobody who saw his 2019 The Invisible Life of Eurydice Guzmão about the fates of two sisters in 1950s Brazil has easily forgotten it. Aïnouz left the dictatorship in Brazil for New York when he was 20 and took up with the beginnings of so-called new queer cinema, starting with his friendship with Todd Haynes.
He's had a very eclectic career so far. Well, next we're going to a debut from French director Ronan Tranchot. Paternel is about a dedicated priest who learns quite abruptly that before he took his vows of chastity, he'd actually fathered a child.
Watching this suspenseful and intelligently layered film, you could definitely say that God works in mysterious ways. For 20 years now, the presence of Grégory Gadebois in a film, any film, he's made about 90 so far, is almost always a reliable indicator of something worth seeing. And he plays a private detective in Woody Allen's French-language film Coup de Chance, which opens theatrically next week in New York. Gadebois, as you can see, is kind of rotund with with a soulful face, and he can play tender or sinister with equal verve. So with his modern Friar Tuck look here, we easily believe that Simon is a priest with a sincere vocation he pursued not from a young age, but later in life. He's good at his job, his parishioners like him, and then this long-ago girlfriend shows up with an 11-year-old boy in tow.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the dramatic workings of Paternel.
J'étais à Montréal quand je l'ai su. T'allais devenir prêtre. J'aimerais que tu reconnaisses Aloé à l'état civil.
On peut dormir chez toi parce qu'il est nul l'hôtel.
Hein? Ben non. J'ai des responsabilités ici. Les gens me font confiance.
C'est ici où t'habites?
T'as rien à faire ici. Elle est où ta mère?
Tu comptais me le dire quand? Tu sais ce que ça implique d'avoir un enfant?
Enfin, Simon, y a des règles à respecter.
11 ans que je fais tout pour lui, que je bosse comme une malade là au bureau, à la maison, hein, que je fais en sorte qu'il soit heureux. Pourquoi? C'est pas possible.
Parce que je suis prêtre. C'est ma vocation.
So if I've understood correctly, the woman said nothing for years, raised the son all on her own in Canada.
Yes, it's true. She didn't say a word for over a decade. He had no idea. But she's saying it now quite forcefully. She needs to lighten her burden. And in her view, it's his turn to fulfill his responsibilities. The church hierarchy, however, reveling in its strict rigor, tells him he can't be both a father and a priest. And the irony of this situation is very nicely embodied by a line of dialogue from the boy. Well, everybody calls you father, and I can't even call you dad. Françoise Lebrun as his housekeeper and Lias Salem as the priest he shares his quarters with are also marvelous.
Okay, well, next to a film, quite different here, multi-award-winning documentary Smoke, Sauna and Sisterhood. This takes us to a steam hut in southern Estonia. It premiered in Sundance. It won the World Documentary Directing Award, the Best Documentary at the European Film Awards, to name just a few of the high-profile prizes it's had. There aren't that many movies in the history of cinema that are set in a steam hut, are there?
Not to my knowledge, but for the record, in 1985, Joseph Losey's last film, Steaming, was released posthumously, adapted from a play about a group of women who cherish their regular visits to a Turkish bath and learn it is going to close. Amazing cast, including Vanessa Redgrave, Sarah Miles, and Diana Dors. But that was fiction. And this is a documentary by Anna Hintz, an Estonia, France, Iceland co-production. The ancient tradition of smoke saunas in southern Estonia is part of UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage treasures for humanity. French cuisine carries that distinction, as do the iconic book stalls along the Seine here in Paris. A Turkish bath, a setting with which many of us are probably familiar, is one thing, but the smoke sauna technique practiced in the special huts deep in natural settings is quite another.
Quite the discovery then. Let's get a feel for that intimate tradition.
Onneksi on pyhäkotis, kun puhtas saat. Latsa synnytti Sanna. Poika syntyi, siis tuli peremismaja. Kun tytär syntyi, vai.
So this film goes through all the seasons. You see ice that's so thick it's impossible to dig a hole through it, and then the forest in full bloom. But actually, it took a lot longer than just one calendar year to film.
Oh, yes, over a period of 7 years. The director found a sensitive and painterly way to film human pores and skin like heat. Camera equipment does not. The camerawoman cooled the camera with pouches of ice that had to be changed every 15 minutes. The steamy environment here gives way to intimate spoken exchanges. 5 women, some of them very fleshy, all of them comfortable with their bodies as adults, but not necessarily when younger, discuss everything from marriage to abortion, speaking simply and directly from the heart. They're all marvelous storytellers without really trying. They start by saying hello to the hut as they enter. It's a chummy greeting of gratitude, and there's a warmth here, both literal and figurative. These are hot chicks.
It sounds really interesting. Well, finally, we're wrapping up the show with some animated action, thanks to Kung Fu Panda. He's back for a 4th movie, and that's out here in France this week.
The humor of this now 4-part franchise stems, of course, from the sheer incongruity of a panda, a round creature, quite unlike Bruce Lee in build, mastering martial arts.
I don't know what you mean.
Hollywood was, for a stretch, smitten with these so-called high-concept stories. For example, Twins, in which we're told that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito are twins. The first installment, Kung Fu Panda, dates back to 2008. It was funny, with great voice work from Jack Black, Dustin Hoffman, and a host of others. I'm told the films have always been popular in China because this Western look at traditional Chinese practices is fairly accurate, or as accurate as it can be with talking anthropomorphic animals. And the series struck a positive blow for matter-of-fact diversity from the start, since Po the Panda's father is a goose who runs a noodle shop. Now, I have here another surprising member of the animal kingdom who wears a very small black belt. He's 23 years old, and he's, he doesn't have an adversary, so he's reluctant to show off his moves. But we sort of revere him in my household.
Kung Fu Hamster, indeed, coming to a screen near us soon, I'm sure. Thank you very much for that wrap-up this week, Lisa. And thanks to our small rodent extra, of course. Remember, you can get more movie news, arts and culture on our website, france24.com, and our social media. We'll leave you with a preview of Po the Panda's latest adventures. See you next time.
How should we do this? Quick and painless? Or slow and painful?
You finally met your match, chameleon.
We're not so different, you and I.
Skadoosh. Stand back. I'm gonna kick my butt.